Hey everyone, welcome to reading in The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason. Now, the first chapter is called The Man Who Desired Gold. And The Richest Man in Babylon is actually a bunch of parables of Babylon to teach lessons about money. And the first chapter centers around Dabasir and his friend Kabai, the musician. And Dabasir is a chariot maker. And Kabai thinks that he's blessed with fortune, whatever, but comes to find out that the reason why Dabasir is doing nothing and just sitting on his fence is because he had a dream that's made him quite uncomfortable, pretty distraught. He had a dream that he had as much gold as he desired. He was able to do whatever he wanted, but when he woke up, he realized he doesn't have that kind of lifestyle. And so if you tie that back to the side edge, he has found a lack from what he wants. He wants to be wealthy. He wants to have streams of gold as much as he desires, but he doesn't. And so this has caused him to be quite uncomfortable and caused him to wonder why. Why is he stuck? And the more he thinks about it, the more him and Kabai begin to realize that both of them and their sons are following the same footsteps as their fathers. And that, yes, they work and they're able to maintain life, but never have what they once ever became wealthy. And this book becomes interesting. The very first chapter becomes interesting because what happens is it actually introduces something rather strange, in that we are slaves to money in two different manners. The first is very obvious, is when you're in debt. When you're in debt, obviously, you're going to be a slave. Like, if you're in debt and that controls your life, you're not going anywhere. But what they do introduce is that, oddly enough, if you depend on one source of income, your job, you are still a slave. Because they compare themselves to the slaves that are taking water to the hanging gardens for the king. And they're like, Kabai mentions how the poor wretches they have maybe a straw bed to lay upon, food to eat, and just a little bit of raiment. But Dabasir is like, we're really no better off. And that's something that's really kind of scary. A lot of people may want to argue with that. I was like, no, I live a lot better than a slave does. But what happens when your job is gone? What happens when your job is gone? All of that goes away. All the comfortable living. You're not stressed out. And so the whole idea is that you can't depend upon one source of income. You can't depend on just a job, or you are still technically only a little more than a slave. Yeah, sure, you're a little comfortable and you can live better, but really think about it. How many of us and how many of you out there aren't that comfortable? How many of you are frantic about what you're going to do next? Are you always just worried about money? Money is your master. You are its slave, unless you find other ways to make money. And then they begin to wonder about wealth. And Kabai recognizes that he just passed by one of their old friends that became quite wealthy, Arkat, the richest man in Babylon, and he recognized Kabai and showed that he was his friend. And they begin to wonder, like, is there some secret to wealth? Can one learn those secrets? And so and what they come to understand is the reason why they were never wealthy is actually due to that they never sought wealth. Sure, they've always wanted money, but they never sought what it really takes to be wealthy. And so the two biggest lessons to learn at the very beginning of the chapter is that if you depend on one source of income, even if you're a small business owner, if it's your only source of income, you are still a slave. Your livelihood, your comfortableness is still dependent on one thing, one source of income. And the only reason why we don't ever get more than that It's because we never sought it. And so, that's the introduction of the richest man in Babylon, and there's so much more that comes after this. So, thank you everyone for joining me tonight, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.